It was just past midnight. The date, September 26, 1983. A seemingly ordinary night, yet the air itself in a top-secret Soviet military bunker near Moscow was thick with an almost palpable tension. Deep underground, away from the world's knowing gaze, a man named Stanislav Petrov sat at his station. His eyes, tired from long hours, were fixed on a screen. A screen that, in this chilling moment, was the singular connection between humanity and its potential obliteration. Petrov wasn't a general with stars on his shoulders. He wasn't a politician, shaping global policies. He was a humble, mid-level officer in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, a man of quiet responsibility. His duty, however, was anything but quiet. He was the watchman for the OCO early warning system, designed to detect any nuclear missile launch from the United States. His job was to be the first to know and the first to report. And then, the silence shattered. A cacophony of sound erupted. Piercing sirens, shrill and insistent, echoed off the concrete walls. Red warning lights, stark and urgent, flared across the control room, casting an apocalyptic glow. Petrov's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. On the screen, a message, stark and terrifying, burned into his vision. Launch, launch, launch. Not just one, not just one, not two. 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles, American missiles, streaking across the digital map, their projected trajectories locked on Soviet soil. This was it, the moment Soviet military strategists had prepared for, wargamed, and dreaded for decades. The American first strike, the opening salvo of a nuclear war, an event so cataclysmic it defied imagination. The computer system, designed for infallible accuracy, was screaming its confirmation. Every eye in that claustrophobic bunker swung to Petrov. The established protocols were chillingly clear, etched into the very fabric of Soviet military doctrine. Verify the alarm, report the launch immediately to the highest levels of Soviet leadership, and prepare for a full-scale, crushing retaliatory strike. Within minutes, the Soviet Union would be poised to unleash its own monstrous arsenal, thousands of nuclear warheads, upon the United States and its allies. The world as we know it, with its bustling cities, its quiet homes, its natural wonders, teetered on the very precipice of nuclear annihilation. And in that terrifying, deafening silence, one man, an unassuming officer, held the entire fate of humanity in the agonizing decision he was about to make. To truly comprehend the monumental burden that fell upon Stanislav Petrov that night, we must delve deeper into the turbulent, paranoia-soaked atmosphere of the early 90s. This wasn't just a Cold War, it was an era of unprecedented tension, a silent, deadly chess match, where every move carried the potential for global catastrophe. Both the United States and the Soviet Union had amassed enough nuclear firepower to obliterate life on Earth several times over. The concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, was the chilling paradoxical philosophy that maintained a fragile, uneasy peace. The logic was simple: attack, and you too will be destroyed. But in 1983, that peace felt thinner, more brittle than ever before. The year had been a relentless series of escalating crises, each one tightening the screw on an already strained relationship. Just weeks before Petrov's terrifying night, a tragic incident had sent shockwaves across the globe. The Soviet Union had shot down Korean Airlines. All 269 people on board perished, including a sitting US congressman. In the West, fury and outrage erupted, painting the Soviets as barbaric and reckless. In the East, Soviet leaders, already deeply suspicious, saw this condemnation as further proof of aggressive Western intent, fearing immediate retaliation. In the White House, President Ronald Reagan, a staunch anti-communist, was unapologetic in his rhetoric. He had famously and chillingly dubbed the Soviet Union an evil empire. His administration was aggressively pursuing a massive military buildup, including the controversial Strategic Defense Initiative, derisively nicknamed Star Wars, a proposed missile defense system that the Soviets viewed as a dangerous attempt to negate their retaliatory capability. Soviet generals genuinely believed an American first strike was not just possible, but potentially imminent, a preemptive blow designed to incapacitate them. Compounding this volatile situation, NATO had launched a colossal military exercise known as Able Archer. These drills involved realistic simulations of nuclear escalation, including the deployment of troops and the use of unique coded communication. To the hyper-vigilant, deeply paranoid Soviet intelligence and military, these exercises looked alarmingly like the final preparations for a real, coordinated nuclear attack. The lines between exercise and reality blurred, fueling the deepest fears of Soviet leadership. So when Petrov's screen flashed with the stark, terrifying confirmation of incoming missiles, it didn't feel far-fetched. It wasn't unbelievable. To the men in that bunker, steeped in decades of Cold War ideology and the immediate anxieties of 1983, it looked precisely like the long-feared, inevitable day had finally, tragically, arrived. Petrov had mere precious minutes to decide. Every second that ticked by was a hammer blow against the sanity of the moment, a beat closer to the point of no return. His orders, ingrained through years of training, were unambiguous. Verify the warning, transmit the report up the chain of command, unleash the pre-programmed fury of the Soviet retaliatory strike. Once that report was made, the machinery of global destruction would begin to grind, an irreversible cascade of events leading directly to full-scale nuclear war. But as he stared at the flashing red lights, a profound unsettling intuition began to gnaw at him. A feeling, a gut instinct, that something was profoundly wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. Only 5 missiles, he muttered, the question hanging in the tense, silent air of the control room. That was the detail that snagged him, the incongruity that wouldn't let go. It made no strategic sense. If the United States were truly launching a first strike, a preemptive blow designed to cripple the Soviet Union, they wouldn't send a mere handful. They would unleash everything they had, a massive, overwhelming barrage of hundreds, even thousands of warheads, designed to saturate defenses and annihilate every major target. 5 felt too few. It felt like a probe, or worse, a mistake, an anomaly. And then there was the critical absence of supporting data. The ground-based radar stations, a crucial independent verification system, remained stubbornly silent. They were picking up nothing. Absolutely nothing. If actual missiles were screaming across the northern skies, traversing continents at incredible speeds, these redundant systems should have detected them. The discrepancy was glaring, a red flag flapping wildly in the face of the computer's confident pronouncement. Petrov stood at a terrifying solitary crossroads. On one side, decades of rigid military protocol, the unwavering trust in seemingly infallible technology, the absolute expectation of unquestioning obedience. On the other, his own human intuition, his profound understanding of the brutal logic of nuclear strategy, his innate skepticism. He took a slow, deliberate breath, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulder. And then, against every fiber of his military conditioning, against the relentless wail of the sirens, against the terrified faces of the men around him, Stanislav Petrov picked up the phone. His voice, remarkably calm, remarkably steady, carried one impossible, defiant message. It's a false alarm. He had chosen doubt over certainty. He had chosen human reasoning over technological pronouncement. He had chosen peace over war. He waited, and waited. The agonizing seconds stretched into an eternity that felt like hours. The missiles never came. The digital projections on the screen faded, replaced by the mundane data of an ordinary night. He was right. The world had just been pulled back from the absolute edge of a man-made apocalypse, by one man's calm, courageous judgment, and his sheer incredible refusal to blindly follow the fatal logic of a faulty machine. What caused the almost unimaginable glitch that could have incinerated civilization? Later, meticulous investigations slowly unveiled the chilling reality. The Soviet early warning satellite, the sophisticated eye in the sky designed to detect the telltale heat signatures of missile launches, had made a truly unbelievable error. It had mistaken sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds over the United States, illuminated by specific rare atmospheric conditions, had been misinterpreted by the satellite's sensors as the fiery plumes of incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles. Imagine that, a trick of light, a freak, atmospheric coincidence, a cosmic alignment, misinterpreted by an advanced machine as the beginning of the end of all things. This wasn't merely a random malfunction, a circuit shorting out. It was a fundamental design flaw, an unforeseen vulnerability in the system itself, a gap in its logic that under a specific rare set of circumstances, could trigger global catastrophe. It was a flaw built into the very architecture of our nuclear deterrence, a hidden trapdoor to Armageddon, and it very nearly swung open that night. The profound irony is that Petrov's job, his primary directive, was to trust the system. It was designed to be foolproof, reliable, the ultimate arbiter of truth, in a nuclear age where seconds mattered. But he trusted something far more complex, far more fallible, yet infinitely more profound, his own human intuition. He reasoned, he doubted, he questioned the unassailable data. He understood that a real American strike would be overwhelming, not limited to a symbolic fight. He saw the terrifying bigger picture, and refused to be a mere cog in a war machine that was, in that critical moment, catastrophically broken. It was not the sophisticated technology that saved us, it was not diplomatic channels, or political foresight, or even established protocols. It was the human element, the very fallibility of one human being, his hesitation, his doubt, his courage to say no when every flashing light and blaring siren screamed yes. It was the triumph of human reason and gut instinct over the cold hard and in this case tragically mistaken, data of a machine. Stanislav Petrov's actions, deemed a violation of protocol for not strictly following the book, was swept under the rug by the Soviet authorities. His extraordinary decision, which averted a global nuclear holocaust, was largely kept secret for years, deemed too embarrassing, too indicative of systemic flaws, to be publicized. He was criticized for failing to properly fill out his logbook, for not adhering rigidly to procedure. He retired quietly, lived a humble life in near poverty outside Moscow, and passed away in 2017 virtually unknown to the vast majority of the world. He had, quite literally, saved from utter destruction. For decades there were no statues erected in his honor, no headlines trumpeting his name. The world continued on, oblivious to the knife edge it had danced upon, oblivious to the quiet man who had pulled it back. But in 2004, when his astonishing story finally began to surface in the West, a few small honors slowly began to trickle in. A modest plaque from an international organization, a quiet trip to the United Nations in New York, a long overdue understated thank you from humanity, delivered far too late for the man himself to fully appreciate. Petrov, always humble, never saw himself as a hero. He often said, with a shrug, that he was simply doing his job, that he was just in the right place at the right time. But history, with the chilling clarity of hindsight, tells a profoundly different story, a story where the fate of billions of lives, the very future of our planet, hung precariously in the balance, and one man's quiet defiance, his refusal to push a button, made all the difference between life and global annihilation. Today, more than 4 decades later, we still live under the omnipresent shadow of nuclear weapons. We remain dangerously vulnerable to technical failures, to political miscalculations driven by fear and mistrust, and yes, to the irreducible element of human error. Our systems are more advanced perhaps, but the fundamental risks persist. Let Stanislav Petrov's story be more than just a forgotten footnote in history. Let it be a stark, chilling warning, a haunting reminder, that sometimes the world doesn't end not because of flawless systems, or brilliant political policies, or wise leaders, but because of one quiet, unassuming man who in the face of unimaginable pressure, chose to doubt, chose to question, and chose ultimately to simply say no.